Why do people keep crossing your boundaries, even after you've been nothing but kind to them? You try to be patient, understanding, even forgiving, yet somehow, the more you give, the less respect you receive. Have you noticed that? It's as if your silence gives others permission to treat you however they please. You start to wonder, is it them or is it me? Machiavelli would tell you, it's you. Not because you deserve disrespect, but because you allow it. Respect, he said, is never freely given. It's extracted through power, through presence, through the invisible language of dominance that most people are too afraid to speak. We live in a world that glorifies kindness, but misunderstands strength. From childhood, we're told to be nice, to turn the other cheek, to not make things worse. But Machiavelli saw through this illusion centuries ago. He understood the dark psychology of human behavior, that people don't respect goodness unless it comes wrapped in power. They respect control, composure, and the quiet confidence of someone who won't tolerate being treated as less. You might think you're earning love by avoiding conflict, but in reality, you're training others to see you as safe to ignore. Think about the last time someone dismissed your opinion, talked over you, or made you feel small. You probably stayed quiet, hoping they'd realize their mistake. They didn't, because in that silence, you taught them something dangerous that you will not resist. And once the world learns that, it stops listening to you. Machiavelli warned that those who fail to command respect invite exploitation. People test your boundaries not because they hate you, but because they're measuring you. Every interaction, every word, every reaction reveals whether you are a person of power or permission. This is the cold truth most people can't face. They believe that being kind will protect them. But Machiavelli knew the opposite. Kindness without authority becomes weakness. Power, he believed, isn't about cruelty. It's about control. Control over your emotions, your words, your silence. The ability to remain calm while others lose themselves. The strength to hold your position when others try to provoke you. That's what commands respect, not aggression, but unshakable presence. You've probably been in situations where you felt invisible, unheard, or undervalued, and you told yourself to just let it go. But what if every time you let it go, you were actually letting your power slip away? What if the real reason people disrespect you is because they sense you won't enforce your worth? The truth is uncomfortable, but it's also liberating, because once you understand it, you can change everything. Stay with me until the end. What you're about to discover next isn't just a lesson in self-respect. It's the Machiavellian way of reclaiming control over how the world treats you. And it all begins the moment you stop allowing what you once tolerated. Maybe you've felt it before, that quiet moment after someone disrespects you, when you walk away pretending it didn't matter, but deep down it burns. You replay the scene in your head, wishing you had said something, done something. That feeling isn't weakness. It's your instinct reminding you that something inside you wants to reclaim its place. Every time you feel disrespected, your mind is showing you the gap between who you are and how you allow yourself to be treated. That's not something to ignore, it's something to confront. If this message is striking something real in you, take a second to share it. Leave a comment below and tell me what part of this truth hit you the hardest. Your story, your experience, your opinion, they matter here. Every comment adds depth to this space. It reminds others that they're not alone in this fight to rebuild respect and power. What you write might be exactly what someone else needs to read tonight. And if this kind of reflection speaks to you, if you want to keep learning how to think, act, and command respect through the psychology of power, make sure you subscribe to the channel. This is where we uncover the hidden principles that most people ignore, the kind of knowledge that reshapes how you see yourself and how the world sees you. Also, don't forget to like this video if you believe these ideas deserve to reach more people. Every like helps this message travel further, reaching those who are still stuck in silence, still being disrespected because they don't yet know they're allowed to change it. Your participation isn't just support, it's part of something larger, a movement towards self-mastery and awareness. Now, stay with me, because what comes next goes even deeper. We're about to explore how Machiavelli's timeless understanding of human nature can help you rebuild your image, reclaim your power, and command respect without ever having to raise your voice. There's an invisible law that governs every human interaction, a quiet truth that Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology ever gave it a name. He wrote, "Men are quick to offend the one who makes himself loved rather than feared." It sounds harsh, almost cruel, but it's not about fear in the sense of violence or dominance. It's about presence. It's about the silent recognition that a person who demands respect through strength of character, through control and certainty, cannot be treated lightly. When you try too hard to be liked, you unconsciously give others permission to overlook you. You make yourself small in exchange for acceptance, and once that trade is made, it's almost impossible to reverse. Most people don't notice how they do it. They apologize too much. They over-explain. They tolerate behavior that eats away at their dignity. They confuse empathy with surrender. Machiavelli knew that being overly forgiving or endlessly understanding doesn't earn loyalty. It breeds contempt. People begin to believe that your kindness has no edge, that your patience has no limit. And in the human mind, what has no limit loses all value. The more you let things slide, the more invisible you become. It's not about turning cold or ruthless. It's about reclaiming balance. True authority doesn't come from shouting or forcing others to obey. It comes from self-respect so grounded that it radiates outward. It's when your silence speaks louder than words, when your eyes say enough without you having to raise your voice. That's power in its purest form, quiet, composed, unbreakable. This invisible law of power works everywhere, in relationships, in workplaces, in friendships. When you act from fear of disapproval, you hand your influence to others. They feel it instantly. But when you act from certainty, when your actions align with your worth, the entire dynamic changes. People start measuring their words, their tone, their approach. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. It's the natural reaction to someone who knows who they are. The truth is, respect isn't a reaction to what you demand. It's a reflection of what you embody. You don't need to make threats or play games. You need to live from a place where your boundaries are non-negotiable. That's what Machiavelli really meant. That fear in this sense is not terror, but reverence. The fear of losing your approval, your trust, your presence. Because when people sense they could lose access to your energy, they treat it with care. Now I want to go even deeper into this idea, to explore why the most powerful people in history mastered the art of commanding respect without ever asking for it. Before we move forward, write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Human nature is built on testing limits. It's how we understand the world, how we measure safety, authority, and power. From childhood, we push boundaries to learn where the walls are and who enforces them. Adults aren't any different. People still test limits. Only now they do it through subtle words, dismissive gestures, or the quiet erosion of your time and attention. Every time someone disrespects you, consciously or not, they're gathering information. They're observing how far they can go before you push back. And if you never do, they learn something dangerous, that they can take more. This is the psychology behind disrespect. The mind is always calculating hierarchy, even in silence. It studies tone, posture, and reaction to determine who holds the real power in any interaction. When someone interrupts you and you let it slide, when they make a cutting joke and you laugh it off, your behavior signals permission, and permission is the foundation of exploitation. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He knew that humans instinctively respect resistance, not arrogance, not aggression, but the simple, immovable force of someone who won't be bent. The truth is that power isn't declared, it's detected. People can sense when you've drawn an invisible line, even if you never speak it out loud. They feel it in your silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of certainty. They hear it in your tone, calm, measured, unshaken. They see it in your choices, when you stop over-explaining, stop justifying, and start allowing your actions to speak for you. The human mind reads all of this instantly. It's a language older than words. What most never realize is that disrespect thrives where boundaries are soft. When you react emotionally, you give away your center. When you stay indifferent yet firm, you remind others that your respect must be earned. It's a psychological mirror. People treat you according to the reflection you project. If you appear unsure, they'll test you. If you appear solid, they'll think twice before crossing you. The most dangerous form of disrespect isn't loud, it's quiet. It happens when people slowly stop valuing your time, your opinions, your space, and by the time you notice, the dynamic has already shifted. That's why awareness is your first defense. Not confrontation, but observation. Seeing the moment the test begins and refusing to play the role they expect. Now, I want to go even deeper into this. To uncover why mastering your reactions, not your words, is what truly redefines how people treat you. Before we continue, write in the comments, "I understand the game." Most people don't realize that their niceness isn't kindness. It's fear, wearing a polite smile. The fear of losing approval, of creating tension, of being seen as difficult. It's the need to be accepted at any cost, and that cost over time becomes your self-respect. You stay quiet when someone crosses a line. You say it's fine when it isn't. You convince yourself that avoiding conflict keeps the peace, but really, it only keeps you powerless. Beneath the surface of every nice person is often someone terrified of rejection, someone who believes that being liked equals being safe. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He understood that societies, relationships, and even governments are built on two forces: dependence and fear. When people depend on approval to feel secure, they can be easily controlled. It's not chains or threats that keep them obedient. It's the silent addiction to validation. They crave to be liked more than they crave to be respected, and that's what makes them manipulable. He warned that when you rely on others for emotional safety, you give them the power to decide your worth. Being nice isn't the problem, it's the intention behind it. True kindness comes from strength, from choice, but performative kindness comes from weakness, from trying to buy affection through compliance. It's the emotional equivalent of offering tribute to those who might reject you. You think it will protect you, but it actually invites exploitation, because people quickly learn that your forgiveness has no edge, your patience has no limit, and your loyalty can be bought with crumbs of approval. The psychology is simple yet brutal. The one who fears disapproval becomes the easiest to control. That's why manipulators thrive around people-pleasers. They sense that your discomfort with conflict is their doorway to dominance. They push and you fold. They guilt you and you apologize. Each time the pattern deepens until you mistake surrender for peace. But peace built on submission always collapses. It breeds quiet resentment, the kind that corrodes you from the inside. You start to despise the very people you're trying to please, and worse, you start to despise yourself for allowing it. That's when transformation begins. When you finally realize that being liked is not the same as being valued. When you stop needing approval, you stop being controlled. And paradoxically, that's when real respect begins. Because nothing commands attention more than someone who no longer needs permission to exist as they are. Now I want to go even deeper into this truth, into how emotional detachment, not aggression, becomes the foundation of true power. Before we continue, write in the comments, "I choose respect over approval." There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, and doesn't beg to be understood. It simply exists and everyone feels it. Machiavelli called it the essence of control. True power isn't loud, it's composed. It's the ability to remain centered when others lose themselves. This is the art of controlled coldness, what he would describe as calm authority. It's not cruelty nor arrogance, it's emotional discipline refined into presence. When a person can remain calm under pressure, detached from provocation, they command respect without ever having to demand it. Machiavelli understood that emotions are the easiest path to manipulation. When you react impulsively, you reveal your weak points, your insecurities, your fears, your triggers. But when you master the art of emotional detachment, you become unreadable. Others project onto you whatever they fear or admire, but they can't predict or control you. That unpredictability creates psychological leverage. People respect what they can't easily influence. Controlled coldness reframes every interaction. Imagine someone insulting you, expecting an emotional reaction, anger, defensiveness, a wounded tone. Instead, you remain calm, maybe even amused. In that moment, the power dynamic shifts entirely. They lose control because their weapon, your reaction, no longer works. The silence that follows becomes your victory. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must learn to appear composed, even when chaos reigns, because perception is power. The same principle applies in modern life. When you stay composed, you become the still center others orbit around. This kind of composure doesn't mean emotional numbness. It's not about freezing your heart. It's about mastering your response. It's about knowing when to speak and when silence says more. It's about creating distance not from indifference but from strategy. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop rushing to fill every silence because you understand that silence makes others uneasy, and unease breeds respect. The world often mistakes this calm for coldness, but that's the point. Machiavelli would argue that appearing slightly detached enhances authority. It signals that your sense of worth doesn't depend on external validation. When people realize they can't shake you, they start adjusting themselves to your rhythm. Your energy becomes the standard in every room you enter. Now I want to go even deeper into this principle, to uncover how power can be expressed without words, through presence alone, and why silence often speaks louder than dominance ever could. Before we continue, write in the comments, I lead through calm. Power doesn't always need a voice. The strongest boundaries are often the ones that never have to be spoken. They're felt, not declared. You can sense them in the way someone carries themselves, the way they look at you, or how they choose when and if to respond. Machiavelli understood this subtlety. He knew that true authority isn't imposed through words but through presence. It's the quiet certainty that tells others, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it. That's the essence of silent dominance, the art of setting boundaries without ever announcing them. Your body speaks before you do. Posture is the first language of power. When you stand upright, grounded and still, you project stability. The human mind subconsciously associates stillness with control. Fidgeting, nervous movements, darting eyes, they all signal insecurity, and insecurity invites challenge. But when your movements are slow, deliberate, and composed, you communicate something primal, confidence without aggression. The same goes for tone. A calm, measured voice cuts deeper than shouting ever could. It signals certainty, while chaos and volume betray desperation. People listen more closely when they sense you don't need to convince them. Selective attention is another tool of silent authority. Who you choose to engage with and who you ignore defines your hierarchy more than any words could. Great leaders throughout history mastered this instinctively. They understood that attention is currency. When you give it carelessly, you empower the undeserving. But when you become selective, when you pause before you answer, when you let silence fill the air instead of rushing to please, people start to chase your acknowledgement. Your restraint becomes magnetic. Machiavelli would argue that influence grows stronger in silence because it creates mystery. The less you explain, the more others speculate. The less you react, the more they project. You become the mirror in which others reveal themselves, and the moment they start wondering what you're thinking, that's the moment you've already taken control. Setting boundaries without words is about alignment between energy and behavior. It's when your inner calm becomes external strength. It's when people feel your limits long before they reach them. No confrontation, no aggression, just presence. Now I want to go even deeper into this concept to reveal how withdrawal, not confrontation, can become your most powerful form of control. Before we continue, write in the comments, my silence has power. There's a moment when silence and distance speak louder than any confrontation ever could. It's the moment you stop arguing, stop explaining, and simply walk away. Most people think power means staying and fighting, but Machiavelli understood something far colder, that sometimes withdrawal is the most calculated form of control. When you remove yourself, you remove access, and access is the greatest privilege people take for granted. Machiavelli taught that when someone fails to respect your position, the correct response isn't revenge, it's removal. He wrote that a wise ruler doesn't punish with noise, but with absence, because when you take away your presence, you take away the benefits that come with it. Your energy, your attention, your approval. People only understand value when it disappears. It's a brutal truth, but one that defines human nature. We often respect most what we can no longer reach. Withdrawal is not weakness, it's strategy. It's choosing to let others feel the weight of your absence rather than the noise of your reaction. In every relationship, personal or professional, your presence has value, but that value diminishes if it's always available. When you learn to step back intentionally, you teach others a lesson that words never could. Access to you must be earned. This art of withdrawal shifts the entire dynamic. When you stop chasing understanding and validation, you become scarce, and scarcity creates demand. It's psychological. Economics. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop showing up where you're disrespected, the balance of power tilts in your favor. Suddenly, your silence becomes their discomfort. They start wondering where you went, why you stopped trying, what they lost, and in that wondering, respect is reborn. The beauty of this principle is that it requires no drama, no declaration, just a quiet exit, strategic, dignified, final. Machiavelli believed that distance sharpens authority because it reintroduces mystery. The less they see of you, the more they think about you. The more they think about you, the more they feel your influence. Walking away doesn't close the door. It locks it until they learn to knock with respect. And once they do, it's up to you whether to open it again. That's the kind of control that doesn't need force. It needs patience and self-worth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this power to show how rebuilding your image after disrespect isn't about proving them wrong, but about becoming untouchable. Before we continue, write in the comments, "I walk away with power." Rebuilding your image after being disrespected isn't about revenge, it's about resurrection, a deliberate redefinition of how the world perceives you. When someone disrespects you, they don't just challenge your boundaries, they reshape how others see you. The mistake most people make is trying to fix that image through confrontation or emotional displays. But power, real power, is never reclaimed through noise. It's rebuilt through composure, silence, and transformation. Machiavelli understood that appearances rule human perception. Once your authority has been questioned, the goal isn't to argue your worth. It's to demonstrate it so undeniably that no one dares to question it again. This begins with emotional composure. The less you react, the more others start to doubt their interpretation of you. When you refuse to show anger or desperation, you introduce uncertainty. They start to wonder, did I misjudge this person? That doubt is your first victory. Strategic silence follows. Instead of defending yourself, you allow your absence to rewrite the narrative. People talk less about what you say and more about what you withhold. Every time you remain calm in the face of provocation, you communicate strength. Every pause becomes a statement. Silence, used correctly, is not emptiness, it's control. It forces others to fill the void with respect. Then comes the subtle demonstration of self-worth. You don't prove it with grand gestures or public declarations. You do it through quiet consistency. You start showing up differently, sharper, more focused, detached from validation. You stop explaining, start executing. You invest in your growth, your craft, your image. Over time, your transformation becomes undeniable. People begin to see that the version of you they disrespected no longer exists. That's not revenge, it's evolution. Power rebuilt this way carries a different gravity. It's not reactive, it's magnetic. Those who once underestimated you start to mirror your restraint. They adjust their tone, their approach, their respect, because they realize that the calmness they mistook for weakness was actually your preparation for mastery. Machiavelli would call this transformation the restoration of perception. When you rise from disrespect with discipline and grace, you no longer need to demand respect. It follows you, and the greatest. Satisfaction isn't proving them wrong, it's realizing you've outgrown the need to. Now I want to go even deeper into this evolution, into how the very energy of disrespect can be turned into power that no one can take away from you. Before we continue, write in the comments, "I rebuild through silence." Every act of disrespect carries information, data about how others perceive you and how you've allowed them to. Most people see disrespect as an emotional wound, something personal and painful. But Machiavelli would say it's a mirror, not a knife. It doesn't cut you, it reflects you. It reveals where your authority has weakened, where your boundaries are invisible, and where you've been too generous with your tolerance. To turn disrespect into power, you must first strip it of its emotion and see it for what it truly is. Feedback. Cold, objective, and brutally honest feedback from the world about how you are being read. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote, "Learn from the offense, then never let it happen again." Every offense is an opportunity to strengthen the weak point it exposed. If someone ignored you, maybe you've been too available. If they spoke over you, maybe you've allowed your tone to fade into uncertainty. If they undervalued you, maybe you've been giving without demand for reciprocity. None of these are reasons to feel ashamed. They're reasons to evolve. Disrespect is the universe's way of highlighting what still needs refinement. The moment you begin to see it this way, everything changes. You stop reacting and start analyzing. You become a strategist rather than a victim. Instead of saying, "How could they treat me like this?" you start asking, "What did this teach me about my posture, my energy, my clarity?" That shift from emotion to observation is where self-mastery begins. Powerful people don't waste time seeking apologies. They adjust their presence. They treat every slight as data, raw material to refine their perception. This approach transforms pain into progress. It dissolves resentment and replaces it with awareness, and the more aware you become, the less likely you are to repeat the same pattern. The goal is not to avoid disrespect altogether. That's impossible. The goal is to become immune to it, to learn so thoroughly from every encounter that no offense can destabilize you again. Machiavelli's wisdom reminds us that control doesn't come from changing others. It comes from mastering your own response. Once you treat disrespect as information, not injury, you become untouchable. Now I want to go even deeper into this truth, into the final Machiavellian lesson, how to enforce respect without ever asking for it, and why the cold truth of self-command is the foundation of every kind of power. Before we continue, write in the comments, "I learn, then I rise." Here's the cold truth that most people never face. You teach others how to treat you. Every time you let something slide, every time you stay silent when you should speak, every time you accept less than what you deserve, you're giving the world a manual on how to handle you. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He knew that respect isn't a favor you receive. It's a standard you enforce. It's not about asking others to value you. It's about showing them through consistency and consequence that your worth is non-negotiable. People learn from patterns, not promises. You can tell someone 1,000 times how you expect to be treated, but they'll believe what your behavior allows. If your boundaries collapse under pressure, your words mean nothing. If your reactions are inconsistent, your authority dissolves. Respect is built on repetition, on the unwavering discipline to maintain your standards, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. Machiavelli wrote that rulers who fail to enforce consequence lose power, not because they lack strength, but because they lack constancy. The same applies to your life. Every time you choose peace over self-respect, you reinforce the idea that your comfort is more important than your dignity. Control over others begins with control over yourself. It's impossible to command external respect when you can't regulate your internal chaos. Emotional control, restraint, and self-awareness are the foundations of influence. When you no longer react to every slight or insult, when you stop explaining your worth and simply embody it, people adjust to you. They calibrate their tone, their approach, even their presence in your space. The world bends to those who cannot be easily shaken. This is the essence of Machiavellian wisdom: to understand human nature without hating it, to move strategically through conflict without being consumed by it. You don't have to become cold to earn respect, but you must become clear. Clarity about your limits, your priorities, your self-worth. And when that clarity meets consistency, it becomes unbreakable power. The next time someone disrespects you, don't rush to react. Observe, decide, enforce, not through rage, but through calm consequence. Maybe it's silence, maybe it's distance, maybe it's removing your time, your energy, or your approval. Whatever form it takes, make it known, not through words but through behavior, that your boundaries are sacred. People might test you once, but if you respond with firmness and composure, they rarely test you twice. This is the cold truth. The world mirrors what you tolerate. You can't demand loyalty, value, or love from others if you keep teaching them that your needs come second. Your silence can be a shield, but only when it's the silence of strength, not fear. True respect grows in the shadow of consistency, watered by consequence and illuminated by self-control. If this message spoke to you, it's because you're ready to reclaim your power. Comment "power" below and share this video with someone who needs to stop tolerating disrespect. Stay strategic, and remember, silence is sometimes the loudest weapon. If you've made it all the way to this point, you already know this message wasn't just another video. It was a mirror. Something inside you recognized the truth in these words. And if it did, that means you're ready to keep growing, to keep sharpening the way you move through the world. If this kind of content speaks to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Every new video is built to help you understand power, psychology, and human behavior on a deeper level. Not just to think differently, but to live differently. Your presence here means you're part of something rare, a space for people who want clarity, not noise. Also, if this conversation connected with you in any way, take a second to like the video. Not out of routine, but because it helps this message reach others who need to hear it just as much as you did. And I'd love to know you were here until the end. Write in the comments, "This message was for me." It's a simple way to say you're on this journey too. There's another video right here that dives even deeper into this world of power and human nature. Click and continue with me there. You'll see how everything we talked about tonight connects to something even greater.